unconscious. I didn't know that he was dead, but it certainly looked like a heck of a blast. I mean, it really jolted him. I mean, it was a very hard shock that he took, and just the way he shot backwards in the air there, the concussion. I felt maybe he was dead. Yes.
All right. So you apply pedal to metal. You take off out of there. Meanwhile, people are probably looking back. Do you have any idea what that object was doing?
I kept trying to look at it in my rearview mirrors. I had these great big rearview mirrors, but I was driving the truck so fast, and the road was so rocky and stuff. All I was just getting this blurry image, and I kept trying to look back, but the guys and everything's in my way, and this thing's up still, up high enough to where you kind of have to look down through the windows behind and like that to see it.
Sure.
And the other guys, they didn't seem to be looking back right at first. I looked back at them, and I was looking at these blank faces on these guys. I don't know if they were scared because of the way I was driving, or keeping their eyes glued to the road in front of them, or what.
All right. In the movie Fire in the Sky, they showed a totally frantic drive, bumping up and down, crashing nearly into things, just really applying the pedal to the metal and trying to get the hell out of there as fast as...
Well, that is a very accurate scene of all the things that they did in the film to detract a little from the actual reality of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that was almost identical to what really did happen. That's the way it really was. I mean, I literally flew down that road, and it was a rougher road than they showed in the film, and there was these humps in the road, and I kept hitting them and flying over them and crashing down on on the other side. And I mean, the UFO had scared the hell out of us. I'm sure this drive was scaring them too.
Sure. How far do you think you got before you stopped?
Not very far, really, especially at the speed I was going. We'd only covered a quarter of a mile at best. Maybe not even that far from where the object was to where I stopped the truck. And where I stopped the truck was partly due to because there was a great big pile of dirt, and I couldn't go over it the way I headed at it. I had to go around it usually at a slow rate of speed, and I knew I was just going to nose the truck right into it, and so I braked, and that's where I stopped. But we'd already put enough distance between us and it. In fact, also, we'd made a left-hand turn in the road, which put the object to my left and out my window where I could look back that way. And once I was in that position, and once the truck was stopped, where it was, and I looked over there, I could see that it wasn't following us, and you could still see a little of the glow through the trees, even though there was a lot of dense foliage between us and it at that time.
Wow.
And so, I knew it wasn't following us, so it seemed safe to be there for the moment.
All right, so that's when a conversation ensued, and I guess a bit of was it an argument or just a conversation about, hey, we got to go back,
It wasn't either one. It was extremely hectic. I mean, much of what some of the guys were saying, I couldn't even tell what they were saying, and maybe I wasn't so articulate myself. I mean, this is the most incredible thing that could ever happen to somebody, especially 20 years ago.
Sure.
You're out there in the woods, and the first time you've ever seen anything like this, especially at 100 feet away, and then you see your friend get blasted by this thing, and we didn't know what to make of it. All we knew is it was horrifying, and we didn't know what the thing was. We didn't know what happened to Travis. We didn't know what was going to happen next. It was terrifying and perplexing, and our conversation was very agitated, and it took us quite a while, several minutes, for us to calm down and start becoming coherent enough to actually make sense with each other. And when we did, we were able to finally, Ken, I think, brought it up first, one of us, me or Ken, that we left Travis back there. We need to go back and get him. It looked like it hurt him. It could have killed him. And that idea wasn't floating too well right there.
What kind of a boss were you? I mean, were you the absolute word of the group, the leader of the group, or sort of the loose leader of the group?
Well, kind of halfway in between there.
Yeah, I'd say Mike was, a leader where he needed to be, and he let things go where it needed to be, It wasn't a bossy boss, but...
I was stern but easy-going, depending on
stern
what
but fair, huh? All right, I was just trying to determine, so somebody else really was the first one to speak up and say, hey, we better go back and pick up Travis's body or whatever's left of him or something?
Yeah, I'd like to say I was the first one to bring that up, but I think it probably was Ken Peterson that said it. But, I mean, the minute he said it, I knew that's what we needed to do, and then it was me and Ken with this concept, we got to go back and get Travis. and the other guys weren't buying it at first. In fact, it got to the point to where I had to give the ultimatum: we're going back, and anybody that wants to can stand here and wait for us, but we're going to go back. And unlike the movie where they have me alone going back, they all elected to get back in the truck and go with me. But it was a little easier to go back. We'd already made the decision to go back. We were getting in the truck to go back, and as we're rounding the truck, I looked back over there, and this thing rose up. I mean, it was just a light through the trees, but then once it got above tree level, I could see it clear, and it just, once it just got above tree level, it just, bang, it was just gone like a bullet, and it just streaked away towards the northeast at an incredible rate of speed. I mean, 1 second, and it was gone.
All right, and everybody saw that because everybody was there, right?
Well, not everybody saw it.
Oh, okay.
Not all of the guys, but it did make it easier to go back because we knew, at least I knew for certain, and a couple of the other guys knew that this thing must be gone. So, even though we'd already made the decision to go back, seeing it leave made it a little easier.
All right. How much time do you think elapsed from when you left till when you got back?
15 minutes maybe.
15 minutes, all right. No point in going to Travis here. Travis is still unconscious at this point. No memories of this particular time, right, Travis?
That's right.
All right. So you got back to the site, drove back to the site, and everybody was in the truck. By the way, that's an important, why do you think the movie got it so wrong?
You tell me. Hollywood.
Yeah, Hollywood.
Some of the things they did in the film I can excuse,
but weren't you guys advisors to the film in some
Travis was
well, in the early going that was the case, and the script was already a script. In its earliest form, it was much more accurate, and then as time went on, as more and more people bought the script and it changed hands and was sold to another person and another studio and then another producer, more and more people started pulling it this way and that way.
I see. All right. So anyway, there you were all in the truck. You got back to the scene. You knew where Travis, roughly where his body, where you had last seen it, so obviously you rushed over there.
Yeah, there was a little concern right at first as we're driving back into it exactly which little clearing it was, because there was like 3 in a row, and it turned out to be the very last one, or the first one we'd come into from the other direction. And what ascertained the exact location was the fact that with the flashlight I was able to find Travis's tracks, his heel print there on the side of the road where he jumped out, and
Sure.
I could see them intermittently through the skifty pine needles laying on the ground there.
So you knew you were in the right place.
So from that, I knew I was in the right place. And,
Sure.
And from there on, we started looking for footprints and any other thing we could, and eventually I pulled the truck up into the opening, and the discussion ensued where we didn't know whether we wanted to get out of the truck yet or not. Finally, we did. Once me and Ken got out of the truck, everybody else got out of the truck, and we met like in the headlights in front of the truck and formed a little huddle there, and then shoulder to shoulder conducted about a half-hour-long search up and down and along the ridge there. And the only footprints that were ever found were just those initial footprints where Travis got out of the truck. There wasn't any sign of him. There wasn't any footprints leading out. And once, putting the whole thing together, by the time we had concluded the search, as best the search we could right there in the immediate area, I concluded personally from that, as well as the other guys there, that Travis did not leave there on foot.
In other words, there were no footprints going either back toward the road or in any other
direction.
Uh-huh.
And, it wasn't like there was a dense layer of pine needles there. I mean, they had logged there and they'd piled that brush pile up there
so you
a couple years before, and there was a lot of bare ground there.
All right, you would have seen the footprints. You two hold on. We're at the top of the hour. We'll be right back. Travis Walton and Mike Rogers are my guests. Fire in the Sky.
You're listening to an oldie but goodie from 1996. here on the best of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
Once again, here I am, Mike Rogers and Travis Walton. The main pair from Fire in the Sky are my guests, and we're sort of retelling the Fire in the Sky story their way, not necessarily the way you saw it in the HBO movie. We're telling you the real story, and we'll get back to it in a moment. Travis Walton and Mike Rogers once again, and the point of the story that we have come to is the crew, the entire crew in the truck, returning to the point where they saw the disc, the saucer, whatever you want to call it. They saw the beam hit Travis. They saw Travis jump like a rag doll, and they took off running and got about a quarter mile away, turned around, went back, searched for Travis. Travis was nowhere to be found, no fingerprints leading in any direction. And so I take it after about, 30 minutes, Mike, you decided he's not here, we might as well go?
Yeah, it was about a half an hour search there, and we got ahead and jumped back in the truck and decided we needed to go into town. And on the way back into town, it was my idea that we should go get some people to help us search for Travis, but I didn't have it in mind that we should notify the authorities, because 20 years ago in that area, that wasn't the thing to do. Ken Peterson, on the other hand, being the good little Mormon boy that he was, he argued against that, felt that we should tell everything right up front. And unlike the movie where I'm shown calling the authorities, it wasn't I, it was Ken Peterson. And when the guy came over and met with us there in a parking lot in Heber, Arizona, Ken proceeded to tell him the whole thing. And, of course, we went ahead and jumped in. And
who was that? Was that the sheriff?
No, it was a fellow there. I can't remember his name, just one of the local authorities. And he in turn called the sheriff right after we'd talked to him. And the sheriff and another deputy came on down there to Heber, and they brought a four-wheel drive and another car, and they had a big truck there with a lot of lights on it and whatnot. And the three of them and three of us, me, Alan Dallas, and Ken, went back up the hill that very night to search for Travis again right away. The other three that didn't want to go back, they were too afraid to go back, and I let them take my truck and take it on into town and notify girlfriends and wives and whatnot. And we with the three, the sheriff and the other two deputy sheriffs, undersheriffs, whatever they were, we went back up the hill and conducted another search. That search was more intense, and one of the guys there, I think his name was Ken Copeland, he claimed to be an expert tracker, and they had the lights and all the gear and everything for it, the four-wheel drive, and they searched all the roads. Search lasted 2 hours or maybe 3 hours in the middle of the night, and they couldn't find hide nor hair of him either.
By now, since you had been back up there previously, I assume that you had more or less obscured the singular path of Travis, the footprints, by searching for him.
Right. Yeah, we pretty much walked all over him by then. I mean, we weren't we weren't even thinking about it, that.
Sure, of course not.
The point is that they couldn't find his tracks anywhere in any of the roads or anywhere up and down there. They couldn't find any part of him. No lead of any kind. But they were skeptical, They hadn't seen what we'd seen. And the sheriff seemed to be somewhat fair about it. In fact, him coming out there the way he did right from Holbrook there on such short notice in the early evening like that was kind of unusual. But
well, now, what was his attitude? You said it was sheriff. Now, look, our buddy Travis ran out. He got under this flying saucer, and it zapped him. That automatically sounds a little suspicious.
Well, the other two fellows there, the other two policemen, didn't believe it at all, and they don't to this day, I don't think. But the sheriff, it turned out, had some sort of an encounter himself sometime before this, and although he'd never been abducted or anything like that, never even really told us exactly what had happened to him. Something had happened to him sometime previous to this that made him somewhat open-minded, but he was pretty sharp anyway. he at least took it serious to the extent that he conducted a search and
Right.
didn't just say, you guys leave me alone,
Well, they said they could see, the shock and the emotion in these guys' faces. One of the guys was still crying, so they figured something really bad had happened, but maybe not quite what was being said.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for accusations of murder to come up. In fact, the very first day of the day search, after we'd concluded that night search and we'd gone into town and notified the rest of the family.
That move does not remove the check by the bishop on H2.
A lot of people and Forest Service and private search and rescue teams there in the area, a lot of the police and everybody. And right there before the end of that first day of searching, accusations of murder began to emerge.
Well, I can imagine. Now, there might have been some reason for it. In other words, there had been some acrimony, differences earlier in the day, during the workday, previous to all this. Had there not?
Well, there'd been a number of incidents over the previous months. We weren't all close buddies. We were just coworkers.
Right. And Alan Dallas was very much like they showed him in the movie. In fact, they got all the characters in the movie pretty accurate. But Alan Dallas was definitely a bad boy. He had a chip on his shoulder. He was against the authorities. He was against everybody. And he had, one time or another, in fact, I'd even had a fist fight with him earlier that year over a problem. But the concept of us killing Travis was understandable. I mean, I could understand. I mean, my head was in that frame of mind before this happened. If I would have been one of the sheriffs or anybody else looking on at this thing from the outside, not knowing what I knew at the time, I would have treated it pretty much the same way. And so I understood that from these people. But it was still hard, and we didn't know what to make of it. I mean, Travis is gone. We can't prove where he went. We only know what we think happened, but we had no way of proving it. And so by the time this search, which lasted 4 days, was concluded, the concept of lie detector tests had already come up, and every time it did, we were, more than willing. Yeah, we'll take lie detector tests, sodium pentothal, whatever you want. We'll do it. And the following Monday, after the fourth day of searching was concluded, that was on a Sunday, and then the following Monday, they had already set it up, and they had a guy come up from Phoenix, Cy Gilson, who was the Department of Public Safety State Police polygraph expert, and he was right there, and we all came, and we weren't late, like in the movie you showed us. We were late. We weren't late. We were early, and unlike the film also where they make it look as though the lie detector tests weren't conclusive, there was a problem with them. There was no problem with them. Alan Dallas was labeled, his test was labeled inconclusive only because he didn't complete his full testing series because of the type of guy he was, and he walked out.
Well, also, they said what they did get was so full of spikes that you couldn't tell whether he was, he would not register the truth or a lie. It was just all over the place, so they couldn't figure out.
Well, publicly they announced it as inconclusive, but we got a hold of the original police report, and internally they described him as basically telling the truth. But, the official thing was inconclusive just because he got upset and walked out in the middle of his test.
All right, there were a total of 7 of you. Of the others who took the lie detector test, how did it come out?
All except Alan Dallas passed with flying colors. That's the real truth of it. There was no problem with him at all.
How many days into all of this was that? 3 or 4 days?
It was the 5th day after Travis had disappeared.
5th day, all right. And so at that point, really, you had passed the lie detector test, with the exception of one that was inconclusive. So did they, at that point, begin to leave you alone?
Well, the polygraph examiner told them that these guys have not committed murder. None of these people have done anything, not even Alan Dallas. None of these people have hurt Travis Walton or killed him. And the sheriff didn't know what to think then. They were beginning to believe that maybe the UFO story was true. And the sheriff very much, in fact, did lean that direction, even though he straddled the fence later on, in publicly. But privately, he admitted that he pretty much believed it. He leaned that direction.
What about the rest of the town? Was it sort of torn one way and the other?
Travis has an interesting story to tell about that concerning the local
Oh yeah, it would have. It was portrayed in the movie as everybody's down on this whole thing, but it was worse than that. It was 50-50. And parts of the town were against each other. The town deputy, he sort of believed it, but his wife didn't. But his brother, who was the town marshal, didn't believe it, but his wife did. So, there was all these people, even along close lines that were divided in their opinions.
Right down the middle.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a small. How big was the town? How many people?
About that time, about 3,000, I think.
3,000.
Or less, yeah.
Yeah, or less.
So everybody knows everybody's business.
Pretty much,
just
yeah.
about anyway. Yeah.
In that respect, it was your typical small town.
Sure.